Another common problem you'll run into often when working with digital images is you'll often encounter color casts. You maybe weren't paying attention to your white balance setting on your camera, or just the lighting conditions ended up giving a slightly red cast or yellow cast or blue cast or green cast to the image. And you want to very quickly neutralize the image and get back to neutral grays or neutral blacks and whites. There's a variety of different ways to address this problem in Photoshop. I'm going to give you kind of a couple quick ones. First thing I actually recommend is go into the image menu, and there's 3 commands that are called the auto commands. There's auto tone, auto contrast, and auto color. I'm going to choose auto tone, and you'll see what that tries to do is neutralize the shadows and highlights and set a nice overall tone to the image. And I'll do the toggle before and after. Here's Command Z or Control Z, and then Command Z again, so you can see the before and after. Just a quick technique to actually preview before and after. Do anything and then just undo to kind of quickly toggle back and forth. So that was auto tone. Auto contrast, you can see, just darkens and brightens certain areas of the image. It doesn't actually address the color cast of the issue at all. Let me undo that. And then there's auto color, which attempts to neutralize the shadows, midtones, and highlights of the image. You can see I've got a pretty decent result here to remove that yellow cast. The problem, however, with those auto commands under the image menu is that they are destructive, right? You're actually changing those values on the actual background layer itself. Let's go ahead and cancel that menu there by clicking. You may want the advantage and flexibility of doing this in a non-destructive way, which means you want to learn how to do the auto commands as an adjustment layer. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this, Command Z, Control Z. And to get the auto adjustments, the auto tone, auto color, or auto contrast, you can just choose either the levels or curves adjustment layer. I'm going to go ahead and choose levels for now. And the reason you can do this is that there's an auto button right here. Now, if I click auto, this is just going to get us the default auto setting. What I want to be able to do is play around with those 3 options that I just showed you: auto color, auto tone, and auto contrast. So I'm going to click the reset button at the bottom of the adjustments panel. And to get to that secret little dialog box where you can actually play with all 3 different variations, I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key and click on the word auto. And this brings up the auto color correction options dialog. It's kind of a mouthful. And you see I have 3 different algorithms. If I mouse over each one of them, I'll get a little tooltip telling you what each of these radial buttons will do. So the first one here is auto contrast. The second one, if I mouse over that, that's auto tone. And if I mouse over the third one, that's auto color. Now the good part is you don't actually have to memorize these. You can just click on each of these radial buttons to see which one gives you the result you're looking for. And then you have this additional checkbox that's kind of cool. It lets you neutralize the midtones as well, to pull out any color cast in the mid-grays as well. So I typically leave that on, and then I click between these 3 to see which one looks best. And for this particular image, find dark and light colors and snap neutral midtones is giving me the best result. If I want, I can even actually save these choices as my new default. So when I click that auto button in the adjustment layer panel, these are the choices it's going to use by default. One little additional piece of advice: a lot of Photoshop experts believe that the default values for clipping shadows and highlights aren't quite good enough. So I'm going to click on the color chip for shadows, and I'm looking at the CMYK values for black. And the defaults are 75, 68, 67, and 90. What I'm going to recommend you do is you change these slightly. Leave cyan at 75, magenta, make that 63. If I hit the tab key, I can jump to the Y field and type in 63 there. Jump into the tab key again, and then for K, for black, I'll type in 95. And what this is giving me a much richer black than the default settings. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And same thing for the highlights. Right now, when we clip the highlights, or when Photoshop clips the highlights for you, it's taking the white pixels in the image to absolute white, to absolute 255. And you typically don't want that. You want some level of gray, some gray detail even in the highlights, so you actually see some pixel value there that has some detail. If you make it absolute white, then you're basically blowing it out to solid white and you have no detail. You really would only see something like that happen in like a specular highlight, like glint off a chrome bumper or something. That's where it would blow out to absolute white. Otherwise, you want some level of detail there. So I'm going to change the CMYK values here to 5, tab 3, tab 3, 0, just to ensure that there is some pixel detail even in your highlights. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And the good news is you'll only have to change those numbers once. I'll bring them up on screen just real quick. Shadows are 75, 63, 63, 95. Click OK. Highlights are 5, 3, 3, 0, and click OK. Because when you click OK this last time, Photoshop's going to ask you if you wanted those to be your defaults. Now, it didn't happen on my screen because I'd already chosen it, but on your screen, you would see a checkbox that says, do you want these to be the new defaults? You would say yes, and now every time you click that auto button, you're going to get those same better results. Let's go ahead and delete this levels adjustment layer, and I'll show you now what I mean by clicking that auto button. I'm going to go ahead and click on the trash can at the bottom of the adjustments panel. Yes, I want to delete that layer, levels 1. I'll go back to the levels adjustment layer in the adjustments panel, and I'll click that auto button, and you'll see I get that new result because I've saved those defaults. So that's how you get auto tone, auto contrast, or auto color as a non-destructive adjustment layer, which can be turned on or off. You can mask it, you can lower the opacity and blend it back down to the original, and so forth. All the flexibility that adjustment layers give you, but still taking advantage of those quick auto commands.